Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Representative Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin is chairman of the new House Select Committee on Engagement with the Chinese Communist Party. He is also the author of a Wall Street Journal editorial this morning. The headline is Stand Up to China's Bullying and Defend Taiwan. Subhead, The Island Nation is a Candle Against the Darkness of the Communist Party. Chairman Gallagher, welcome back. I gather you went to Taiwan. You didn't tell me about it. You and Joe Biden don't keep me abreast of your travel plans. When did you go to Taiwan?
Well, Hugh, I just your operational security was suspect, and so I felt like I had to keep it in the dark.
Dwayne is here.
Last week, so I took the direct out of O'Hare and was there for 4 days on the ground, and it was a very fruitful trip. Met with President Tsai, met with Vice President Lai, who's likely to be the DPP candidate for president in the January 2024 election. Met with their Minister of Defense, met with the head of their intel community. Met with their foreign minister, met with their national security advisor. So it was a very productive 4 days on the ground and had a wide range of discussion. I think the thing that stands out more than anything else is the fact that, we need to be moving faster to deliver on the foreign military sales items that they've purchased. We're nearing $20 billion worth of equipment that has yet to be delivered, including some Stingers and Javelins that they purchased in 2015. And we have yet to deliver. So at the same time, we're lecturing the Taiwanese about investing in asymmetric defense. Well, we need to provide the asymmetric weapons that they've purchased that would allow them to defend their country. And time is not on our side. The threat from China is real. China is attempting to meddle in their upcoming election. And so we just need to be moving heaven and earth to arm Taiwan to the teeth before it's too late.
Chairman Gallagher, I have never been to Taiwan. And, I've been to Hong Kong. I've been to Japan. I've just never been to Taiwan. Give our Steelers fans some idea of what that island nation is like.
Well, it's incredibly easy to get to, and it's incredibly safe. And Taipei is a very modern city, so I think your listeners would love a visit there. I mean, it's first world city in Taipei. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, one thing that I think going there gives you an appreciation for. Well, let me say two things. One, just how remarkable the Taiwanese experiment is. I mean, you're talking about a country that transitioned from authoritarian rule to democracy effectively bloodlessly, which is rare, if not unprecedented in modern history. And the second thing is the terrain is very, very difficult. I mean, this is a difficult military problem for the PLA to solve. Not only just the difficulties inherent to conducting an amphibious landing, but just the vegetation, the hills, the fact that it's an island makes it very difficult to conquer. That being said, and the Taiwanese are very conscious of this, if the good news is that it's an island, the bad news is that it's an island, and it'd be very difficult to resupply in the event of a conflict. All the more reason why we need to be surging and stockpiling munitions to the island now before the shooting starts. And almost every Taiwanese leader that I spoke to brought up the issue of Ukraine as a wake-up call in terms of the risks of modern warfare, the risks of authoritarian aggression, and they are on the front lines of authoritarian aggression. In my op-ed, I sort of referenced a speech that President Tsai gave at their National Day last year in October, where she talked about that, and she also talked about the fact that to say I am Taiwanese is a statement of honor, given everything that Taiwan has accomplished in recent years. But your listeners, I think, would love a visit there, and I would encourage Americans to go to Taiwan. It's also just massively
I'm going to have to explore getting there, because you don't really understand a place till you put eyes on it and being there. I never understood Hong Kong until I actually got there and wandered around, and the same true of Japan. Chairman Gallagher, there's a debate in the Republican Party about the amount of lethal military aid we ought to give to Ukraine. I'm a hawk. I want more and better, faster, including F-16s and A-10s. A-10s would change a lot on that static front line in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians can fly them. It's not a hard plane to learn how to fly. They can probably fly the F-16. Some Republicans like Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence agree with me. Other Republicans like Ron DeSantis say no blank check. And then some Republicans like former President Trump came out and called people like me warmongers. But that's fine. I'm not a decision maker. What do you think about aid to Ukraine? Where are you on that spectrum? And what factual scenario unfolding in the next year would persuade you were wrong? I've answered that question by saying if Ukraine collapses and we've given them everything, then I would have been wrong. If we end up with HIMARS and advanced weaponry in the Russian hands for sale to China, What say you on both those questions?
Well, to the first, I signed a letter last week, a bipartisan letter, calling on the administration to provide Ukraine with increased air superiority, including F-16s and similar fourth-generation aircraft, as soon as possible. The Ukrainians also need ATACMS along with cluster munitions. They really want cluster munitions, and we have them. We have the ability to provide dual-purpose, improved conventional munitions, Great Eagle drones. And so, as I've talked with you before, Hugh, it just seems like we're always in this cycle of the administration dragging their feet, giving us the same excuse that this would be too provocative, and then ultimately they're forced into providing a system, and it doesn't prove provocative; it proves deadly for Russia on the battlefield. The second thing, what would persuade me that I'm wrong? Yeah, similarly, if we've given this level of support and the Ukrainians still lose on the battlefield, I do think it's fair for skeptics to point out that certain Western European allies, Germany in particular, need to put more skin in the game. They need to step up. The other thing that I think would be a massive missed opportunity is if we didn't take advantage of what Ukraine has exposed in terms of the fragility of our defense industrial base in order to turbocharge our production of key weapon systems, because many of them are the same ones we need to arm Taiwan and to prevent a war, our systems that we're using in Ukraine. And so if we don't use this to revitalize our defense industrial base, I think that would be a massive failure. The final thing I'd say, Hugh, is that many Taiwanese leaders I mentioned, particularly their director general of something called NSP, the head of their intel agency, talked about the increasing strategic convergence between Russia and China, and how Putin is increasingly China's junior partner in this new
A vassal state, right? It's becoming a vassal state like Iran.
And so for critics of our aid to Ukraine to suggest that we could somehow isolate that problem and thereby reinvest resources into the Pacific, I think misunderstands the de facto alliance that we're seeing on display between Russia and China. And so I think we need to do a better job of teasing out the connection and the partnership between these two countries.
Congressman Gallagher, I think General Secretary Xi has flipped the script from 1972. He's going to go to Moscow in the next few months. That's been announced in the Wall Street Journal today, which is an echo of the flip script of Nixon going to Beijing. The stronger partner goes to the weaker partner in the three-way superpower competition. I think that's going to happen, and I think the reality of the new axis of evil, Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran, is there. And Americans have to open their eyes. It's really one enemy. And I mean, they're an enemy. They're an adversary. Agree or disagree?
I agree. Well, whenever I'm asked, is China our enemy? I say, well, the Chinese Communist Party is the enemy of freedom everywhere it exists, and it's the enemy of the Chinese people. Chinese people need not be our enemy. In fact, they're the primary victims of the Chinese Communist Party's aggression. And understanding that distinction, I think, is critical to our effort. Basically, if you look back to the No Limits partnership that was signed between Putin and Xi before the invasion, you saw similar rhetoric about color revolutions. These are two leaders that share a sense of historical revisionism, grievance, a desire to sort of reclaim the glories that were lost long ago for their countries. And though they are strange bedfellows, though they have diverging interests in some areas, they're very good at presenting a united front against their main enemy, the United States. And so they don't hesitate to think about us, to talk about us as an adversary, even as we sometimes clutch pearls in terms of the language we use to describe these evil, evil regimes.
Is the CCP's long game? I think it is, but I think they eventually intend to get Manchuria back. Russia took it from them. And they intend to exploit Russia's natural resources in the way that they need natural resource exploitation from Africa and Cambodia. They are expansionists, and Russia just can't oppose that. They're so desperate. Putin's worried about hanging on to power, I think, at this point. So Xi's going to have the keys to the Kremlin. And I don't think I'm being an alarmist here. I think that's the reality.
Well, right now he's got the keys to the gas station of the Kremlin. He's getting energy on the cheap as a result of the war in Ukraine. You mentioned their territorial ambitions. Another thing that was really evident in my trip to Taiwan, and so many Taiwanese leaders brought it up, is the fact that the CCP's takeover of Hong Kong put a stake in the heart of this idea of one country, two systems, which is the same sort of fiction they were using in terms of their relationship with Taiwan, such that Xi Jinping's closest advisor, Wang Huning, sort of the chief ideological architect of the Chinese Communist Party, I'm told is revising their entire doctrine with respect to Taiwan, because even they understand that one country, two systems is not something the Taiwanese people are going to buy anytime soon. As I've said to you multiple times before, what happens in Taiwan won't stay in Taiwan. What happens in Xinjiang won't stay in Xinjiang. This is Xinjiang in particular is a laboratory they're using to perfect their instruments of repression, and it's a model they intend to export around the world.
Did any of your colleagues on the select committee accompany you to Taiwan?
Representative Ro Khanna and Jake Auchincloss were there. We overlapped in terms of our trips, and we did some joint meetings, which was great to have a bipartisan meeting. We did one meeting in particular with Morris Chang, the founder of TSMC, the world semiconductor superpower, 91 years old. That was a fascinating meeting. We talked about economic and tech issues. One final thing I'd highlight, Hugh, because it often gets lost in our agenda. We need an economic and trade agenda with Taiwan. The security piece is more obvious, but we're making little progress on a free trade agreement with Taiwan. I think that's essential. We're the only G7 country that doesn't have a double taxation agreement with Taiwan, which is a huge disincentive for Taiwanese investment in the United States, because it's effectively taxed not twice, but 3 times, and it makes no economic sense for them to invest money in the United States. So there's all sorts of things we could do on the economic side that would further enhance our partnership with Taiwan. And oh, by the way, the Taiwanese make great whiskey. If that's something you're interested in, Hugh, Cavalan, I would highly recommend it. And you can use it in a Wisconsin old fashioned. So many things to love about Taiwan.
A Wisconsin old fashioned? What in the world is a Wisconsin old fashioned? Is that like a sheep drinking beer? What is that? With some cheese in it? A Wisconsin old fashioned. Someone's got to send me the recipe for that.
Instead of an orange garnish, it's just a cheese curd garnish.
That's a cheese curd. By the way, the Wisconsin Supreme Court primary last night, that race is going to matter a lot in April, isn't it?
Big time. Big time. We need all the help we can get. I mean, that's can't overstate the importance of that race.
Well, we will talk about that down the road. Chairman Gallagher, thank you. Follow him on Twitter at Rep Gallagher.